Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Dr. Zoetanya Sujon, and I'm here to talk to you about a research project I've conducted and a paper called Playful Dataveillance, Unpacking Google's Edtech Strategy through the Pioneer Project. Now, my name is Dr. Zoetanya Sujon. I'm the Program Director for Communications and Media at the University of Arts London. And as you can see, I've got my Twitter handle there. So please do get in touch if you have any questions or comments. I'd love to discuss this further and or share any comments or work that you're doing in this area. So to take you through some of the overview of what it is that I'd like to talk to you about today, this one research project I did began with a very small piece of work looking at one educational VR product called Google Expeditions. What this led to was a larger understanding of Google's platform strategy and the way in which it wants to unroll in the educational market. So Google Expeditions was unrolled through something called the Pioneer program, which I'll also tell you about. And this led to a better understanding of Google for Education and its real aims to promote and sell G Suite for Education, Chromebooks, and Google's cloud services. Of course, this does illustrate the way in which Google works in a multi-sided market where it's giving away free products, which, economically would be a loss in order to grow other services such as search, such as G Suite for Business, etc. It also points to the ways in which educators and learners are used as new data frontiers for data collection, for surveillance, and for monitoring learners and educators within the education market. So one of the key points that I take away from this research is that Google's EdTech strategy begins with something called Playful Dataveillance. Now, this project has been published, and I'll share those details with you at the end of this talk, but Playful Dataveillance is something that's more of an emerging concept and is really about how it is that play around these technologies can be used in order to record, monitor, capture, and data veil those people who use it. So just to introduce the virtual reality toolkit and the virtual reality product, Google Expeditions is a virtual reality program which allows people to explore in a virtual way all sorts of different kinds of places. So Google pitches this as field trips to anywhere. Ben Schramm has talked about Google Expeditions as being much cheaper than getting into a big yellow school bus and actually going on a field trip. So there's that element. And they have they have over 1,000 different expeditions and can explore places like Buckingham Palace or even the surface of Mars, as you can see on the screen ahead of you. Now, to get a better sense of Google Expeditions, I've just included a few pictures to kind of understand what it looks like. So the toolkit involves a teacher tablet, and we can see some Chromebooks, which can also work in the first image, and then the headsets and the smartphones which are used to host Google Expeditions and allow students and learners to explore the Google Expeditions. So typically there's a teacher tablet, there's up to 50 head-mounted displays, which in this case are Google Cardboard, which is another product that Google has pioneered and developed and uses the sort of anybody, anywhere can access virtual reality in a very cheap and affordable way as the logic behind that. It also has the Android smartphones, up to 50. And then there's the teacher tablet, and the teacher can orient the students. They can pause the expedition. They can ask questions. They can do all sorts of things. So it is one of the unique aspects of Google Expeditions that there is that teacher control of up to 50 learners' experiences. The third picture shows a screenshot of a field trip to Chernobyl. And what you see is, one image of the 3D photoscape, which is used, as well as some text, which is for the teacher to be able to augment and supplement what they're telling students and how it is they can guide them through the field trip. So the Pioneer program is something that accompanies the expeditions, and it was something that was launched in order to get people to engage and try out Google Expeditions, but it's also the public-facing part of Google Expeditions. So what it was it was an exclusive opt-in program, and this is one of the things that I participated in order to do the research with Google Expeditions. So you apply to participate in the Pioneer program in order to test out, pioneer Google Expeditions. Internally, this program is referred to as the Roadshow. And I think this is really significant because in all their external documentation, they talk about the Pioneer program, which highlights, the importance of experimenting and leading with the experiential learning. Whereas in the Roadshow, it's more about touring and marketing and selling. And this is all encapsulated within the terms the Roadshow. To give you an idea of the scope and breadth of the Pioneer program, it has been used by over 1 million students in the US and over 1 million students in the UK as well in 2016, 2017. It's been trialed in 11 countries, and I believe that number has since gone up. And it's also available to anyone who just wants to use Google Expeditions, so anyone can download it. They're also, like Google typically does, continually testing and developing Google Expeditions as a product. In 2018, they launched Create Your Own Expedition, as well as augmented reality. So one of the things that I think is really important in terms of understanding Google Expeditions and the Pioneer program is that Google Expeditions enables something that I've described as disruptive play. So it's playful in that it allows people to interact in ways that they wouldn't. And this is something that came from the research that I did. People commented that it was wonderful to see colleagues at play, as well as learners at play. And it's disruptive because it involves, in the project I did, it involved getting over 400 people to leave their classrooms, to change their scheduled class activities, to sit in circles in order to use the Expeditions Toolkit, and just interact really differently. So it's disruptive in an organizational way, in an educational way, in terms of the technologies that people are using, as well as resources. So it's highly disruptive. Yet that playfulness also enables some, dataveillance. It allows Google to be able to access, millions of educators and learners' experiences, to look at what it is that they're looking at, how they're using the technology. There's massive amount of data which are generated every time Google Expeditions is used, never mind Google's other products, which enable all sorts of classroom surveillance. So these two things, disruptive play and dataveillance, are really linked. And this is something that I think is important for understanding Google's EdTech strategy. So just to look at some of the play, some of the ways in which the technology was exciting, one of the questions we asked in the survey was, did you experience a wow moment? Now, 65% of respondents did experience a wow moment. And as you can see, these are some of the things that they said. The feeling of being there, feeling the space, to see different cultures. So that experiential element, and I'll just let you have a look more closely at some of the things that they said, was really, really significant. It's also notable, and there's more information on this in the paper, that 35% of respondents did not experience a wow moment. But anyway, that is a topic for another talk. And part of the reason I think that the technology is so exciting was not just the kinds of play it enables, but it comes with the symbolic power of the Google brand. So some researchers have talked about this as Google's consecrated status. And even Google themselves talk about Googliness, the essential characteristic that Google employees have, a person who is humble, curious, conscientious, and thrives in ambiguity and loves to learn. So these kinds of characteristics, they come along with the staff who, brought Google Expeditions. And there was a very high level of symbolic power. So it mattered not just that Google Expeditions was, an opportunity for people to play and disrupt their routines, but it was also Google's Expeditions. So I think that was an important aspect, both in the play element as well as what is more invisible, the dataveillance. Now, the other thing along with this exciting technology is that a lot of the labor used to unroll and introduce Google Expeditions was invisible. So there were Google Expeditions field assistants who, in the many agreements that needed to be signed in order to do the research, as well as just engage within the Pioneer program, were not meant to be publicly mentioned in any way. There's also platform laborers, of which I became one in terms of organizing and unrolling Google Expeditions. And as I will talk about shortly, there was also a whole range of people in the Apps Events team who were helping not just share Google Expeditions, but promote Google for Education, its many other products. So, you know, and even with the Google Expeditions, the field assistants were taking notes and filming and taking pictures, and then they took the devices which were recording all the behaviors and interactions with them. So both surveillance and dataveillance were at play in the Google Expeditions experience. And this is also something that applies to other Google products. So what I learned from Google Expeditions was that it wasn't just about Google Expeditions. Following the completion of the Google Expeditions Day with 400 people, I began to receive invitations to Google for Education events. And I expected them to be about Google Expeditions, but they were really about Google for Education. And in these events, post-Expeditions, I learned about what it was that Google for Education does from Google for Education. The Google products were showcased. Educators and technologists were encouraged to network. And there was also a whole other team of people, the Apps Events team, which were involved with Google certification. And they were also pitching and talking to participants. There were featured Google schools, which were public-private partnerships. And these Google schools are schools whose technology are completely provided by Google. And, you know, they use Google Classroom and all these other kinds of products. And these were also being promoted at these events. The other thing that was really important at these events was that there was a discourse and a tone which was hugely celebratory. You know, it was like educators were being wooed. Jen Holland, for example, who's the Google Expeditions product manager, began several of the events talking about how education is important and how much Google loves teachers and students. And this is really important. Educators were also showered with goodie bags and, you know, high-end appetizers and all sorts of things. Yet the real selling point were Chromebooks, G Suite, and cloud storage. Google Expeditions was one small piece in this larger puzzle. So why is Google doing this? It's a massive and growing market. The Edtech market is considered to be something like, worth 30 billion in the UK, and it's growing, especially within the coronavirus moment. You know, remote learning is so important. As well, Playful engagement is about getting, young people loyal to the brand at an early age. And it enabled mass data collection through Playful dataveillance, as well as the take-up of other Google products. So Google Expeditions and its Playful dataveillance is one thing, but its Google products enabled entirely new levels of this kind of dataveillance. And as we can see, Google is a growing digital empire, like, you know, part of Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, as well as BAT, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent. And all of these use multi-sided markets. All of these are about global surveillance and platform capitalism. But Google, I think, in Google Expeditions was really about looking at new data frontiers. And so the ways in which Google Expeditions allowed people to interact in playful ways also enables new kinds of datification and new kinds of dataveillance. So that's the end of my talk. I wanted to say thank you so much. If you're interested in some of the things I spoke about, they have been published in a paper, of which I've provided a link for you. And there are also some details if you would like to get in touch. Please do. Thank you very much.